What's up, sports fans, and welcome back to Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports. And in studio today is Brooke Kirchofer of WWL, sports reporter. Brooke, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to talk LSU football, Pels basketball, and obviously the big headline for this week, Saints training camp. First week wraps up.
At Baer LLC, we have the privilege of representing victims and survivors that are oftentimes involved in catastrophic incidents that affect their lives.
If anyone looking for a personal and loving relationship with law, I would choose Baer Law.
At Baer Law, our goal is to turn victims into victors.
Paulson Adebo looks good. Dennis Allen is glued to the books. He's focused on getting his team ready. He's not really focused on, the outsider perspective. And you like to see that, obviously. But first and foremost, we want to let everybody know that we are presented by Helm Paint, decorated by Helm Paint and Baer Law LLC. Go visit BaerLawLLC.com and HelmPaint.com. Brooke, first and foremost, a little bit about you. When did you kind of know that you wanted to be a sports reporter? I know you played soccer in college, but when was kind of that journey started?
Man, we go way back for that. When I was growing up, of course, born in Pennsylvania, but raised in Houston, Texas, every time my dad would come home, and I mean, this is from like before I could walk, he'd come home from work, look at us, go, "Is there a ball on the TV? Well, you better find it." So we just grew up around sports, and growing up playing soccer, I knew, I wanted to play Division I soccer. And then after that, I was like, well, I don't want to necessarily play professionally. Professional women's soccer isn't what it is, what it was, back then, what it is today. And So I wanted to stay in sports, wanted to tell athlete's story. And so journalism seemed like the perfect avenue.
Cool. And how was your just like college journalism experience and just the college experience in general? Oh,
it was awesome. I got so lucky. Of course, I went to Lamar because that's where I was offered to play soccer, but it ended up turning into an amazing experience and opportunity for journalism. We had an ESPN3 affiliate on campus.
Wow.
So we're already being able to do like color commentating, hosting football games, turning features. And then, of course, like a lot of schools, as LSU has Tiger TV, we had LU-TV. So there was so many avenues to figure out, okay, do I actually like doing this? Is this something I want to do as a career? And I was able to figure that out pretty early.
Awesome. And take us through kind of after college, how you ended up at WWL.
It has been a long journey, as it's been for a lot of sports broadcasters.
You got to start in a small market.
Right. You got to go where the job goes. Yep. And I was offered a position in Columbus, Georgia. Couldn't tell you where that was on a map. It's actually on the Georgia-Alabama state line. So we got to cover, we were smack dab in SEC country. We were covering Auburn, Alabama, Georgia full-time. Covered the Braves from afar. So got a little bit of pro sports in there, but it was strictly college football, and high school football was huge out there. And a lot of the guys we see now at LSU and in the NFL come from that part of town.
Right. That's cool. And take us through kind of, so this is still year one, right? I don't know if it's day 360 or you got 5 more days until you hit year 2. But when you started at WWL, what has kind of made you love New Orleans, made you love covering, these teams that we have in the Saints and Pelicans, and also Tulane, LSU, and some of these other sports? How's kind of the New Orleans experience of your job been?
Yeah, so I hopped around a little bit, went Columbus, Georgia, Baton Rouge for 2 years, and then New Orleans. So I kind of knew a little bit about New Orleans and this Louisiana flavor that you all have out here. And the biggest thing I learned is if you love the city, it's going to love you back tenfold. And that's with food, that's with culture, music, and of course, sports has just been booming over the last year. Of course, with the Pelicans postseason run, the Saints have been so much fun to watch, and just the guys that they brought in this offseason. And of course, LSU has everything you want with baseball, football, basketball. It's just been so much fun.
Cool. And I got to ask, how is it like working with Doug Mouton?
Oh, he's the best. Yeah. we really do have a good group of guys, me, Doug, Ricardo, and Adam Nay. Like it's you couldn't ask for a better sports department.
Is it true that Doug Mouton is typically the loudest person in the room?
No, never, right? He's got some competition with some other of these New Orleans folks, as you know.
Cough, cough, Fletcher Mackel. No, Doug and Ricardo are awesome. We're going to transition over to, the big headline. Obviously, we wrapped up the first week of Saints training camp, and I was on Ross Jackson's Locked on Saints show, talking about kind of the bigger headlines, Paulson and Debo stepping up, Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport's lack of a finger.
That was pretty
how
startling to see.
Yeah, it's that's
when you see it in person. And what we thought was it was just the tip of his finger. Oh no, it's more or less he's lost the majority of his pinky.
Yeah. It was like I was in the media room, and it was kind of quieter. I don't think you were there that day. And Doug Mouton was in kind of over by the table, I think, like editing something. And I was sitting next to Sharif and Fletcher. And I forget what Doug said that like he didn't want to watch. I think it was the finger. And he was like, I don't want to look at that. Like, do I really want to look at that? And then he said, I haven't even watched the Joe Theismann. He's never watched.
He's never seen it. Listen, all sports injuries that you see.
I know. What do you think about that? Do you watch them? Can you handle it?
I don't share them.
You don't share them.
Refuse to share them. But I mean, as a journalist, some of them you have to see. Like I had to go back and watch what happened to EJ Liddell's knee and how that happened. He hurt his knee, came out, and then hurt his knee again. So you have to go back and watch those things. Ugh. Just as a former athlete too, who watched her teammates tear their ACLs multiple times, it's not fun.
I feel like it's one of those preview statements as a reporter that like you never really want to say, but it's kind of like deep down inside, it's kind of fun to say like, we're about to show these images and we're going to let you know that it's going to be graphic. Like
right.
It is a little bit of a warning. It is not something we would encourage you to do at home, or it's not something that you maybe want to show your children.
No.
But yeah, the finger's not a big deal. I mean, that's not going to hurt anybody's feelings, I think, by showing that image. But yeah, if you don't want to watch Joe Theismann and Lawrence Taylor's, the tough injury to Joe Theismann, I understand for all the fans out there and Doug Mouton himself. Yeah. But what stood out to you? I want to kind of talk about some of the players that we heard from, but just from on the sideline watching camp drills 7-on-7. Through the first week, what are your kind of big highlights?
Well, I'll start with defense, and you mentioned him. Peyton Turner has really popped when you watch him. First of all, we didn't really get to see him much at all come into form last year, of course, with that shoulder injury and then having to get surgery, I believe. And number one, he's enormous. He's about as big as Marcus Davenport as far as height goes. He's been able to put on some weight, and just coming off the edge. I think he had a sack the other day. Well, of course, he's not actually hitting the quarterback, but we can record it a sack. Yeah. And in talking with David Onyemata, I asked him, we've been hearing about Peyton Turner from Dennis Allen and other coaches, but what do you think of when you hear Peyton Turner, and like what have you learned about him? And he's like, oh, he's Marcus Davenport 2.0. And I'm like, that's a pretty good compliment to have two of those guys in. And a lot of people saw him as, a replacement for either Cam or Marcus. But we know how that defensive line comes in and out. I mean, they're constantly rotating the guys on the defensive line. And imagine being able to add him to the mix this year. They're going to be a dangerous defensive line, who, remember, going into last season, they were last in sacks going into Seattle.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild to think about?
And as good as their defense was.
Right. Of course, that changed by the end of the season. But thinking about that, that's definitely not going to be the case this year if everybody stays healthy.
DA probably saw that stat, and it's one of those things where like, one of those things where like, oh, I don't care about national media. But when you see that stat as maybe the best defensive coordinator, defensive mind in the NFL, probably saw that stat in his office and like threw something at the wall and was like, this will change.
Tomorrow. That was early in the season.
Yeah, for sure. Your take on Dennis Allen and maybe just another kind of offensive highlight player. But Dennis Allen, what you see from him on the field as far as like interacting with the players and being a leader and a new head coach of the Saints. Obviously, he had time as a head coach with the Raiders in the past, and on the field, and then just his presence, his kind of state of mind that you can just kind of sense when he's at the podium.
I'll start with Dennis Allen. One of the things when we actually went to Dennis Allen's hometown and also to Texas A&M this offseason to find out who the guy is under the headset, right?
Little feature story.
The little feature story, talk to some of the guys that know him best and have seen him grow into this role.
Yeah.
And then every single one of them said, as cliche as it sounds, like he is a football guy. And I think that we've seen that. Like he is his press conferences are crisp. Like he gets his answer out there. Everything is so detail oriented. But what surprised me is I was curious how he was going to be on the offensive side of the ball as a head coach now. And yesterday we saw him really like in on those 7-on-7 drills when it was just the running backs and being highlighted in the 7-on-7 drills. And he went over to one of the undrafted guys and like patted him on the head, like went out of his way to walk over there. And it's just different seeing him with the offense and putting in his little touches. And he said too, he's like, I'm going to put my mark on this team. He is still very much involved with the defense. We see him over there having conversations with linebackers coach Michael Hodges at times and Ryan Nielsen, and just making sure things are still going on as they have in the past years. And that's what he said he wanted to do. He wanted continuity. He said a lot of things were not going to change with him bringing in the majority of the staff. Of course, new wide receiver coach and Cody Burns. But other than that, it seems like training camp has looked like it has in years past. There hasn't really been much difference other than maybe some like 7-on-7 is earlier than it has been in other practices, or they move things around. But in my eyes, it's looked similar. And then offensive player who has stood out to me so far. I don't
some ruckus outside on Magazine Street.
It's a Sunday.
We're doing
Sunday brunch time. What time is it?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah.
It's like what? It's 1:47 p.m. as we record this. But I mean, come on, people. We're doing a Sunday podcast.
Right. But offensive player who has surprised me too, and I think just being out there yesterday, and we were able to talk to Dennis Allen about him too, was Chris Olave, the first round draft pick, who they spoke so highly of, that like his route running was elite, that he's a smart player. Well, we've been 100% seeing it. I mean, that 60-yard touchdown pass from Jameis Winston,
incredible.
crisp.
Yes, clean throw, great catch. That dude is going to be a deep threat, to say the least. I watched yesterday. So I did have a little time to do a little research, but again, I wanted like kind of your college and your journalistic background to be, an unprepared question to answer.
Smart.
I did go back and watch your interview with Chris Olave after he got drafted.
Yeah.
Just being up close and being able to cover the draft. How was that opportunity and specifically the conversation you had with Chris?
Oh, it was so much fun. So we actually, I think you watched the one
Vegas,
after the draft, right? Once he was selected.
Yes, it's in Vegas, right?
In Vegas.
Okay.
So we got up there early. We had, for TV, like we do a special when we're up there. We're interviewing the draft picks that are there, and you don't know. I mean, there's like 25 guys that they select to be there, and you don't know if anybody's going to get drafted by the Saints that are actually there. And like we know the Saints in past have not drafted players that we've expected. That changed this year. Shout out to Dennis Allen for that.
Players,
Right. So went up and got Chris Olave, but we actually talked to him the day before the draft, and he was like stone when we asked about the Saints. And I'm thinking, does he know? Or is he really not? I mean, you could not pull at him to like get it out of him. I mean, he obviously talked about playing with Michael Thomas would be cool, playing with former Ohio State guys as he's from there. And he knows that the Saints have typically drafted or been high on Ohio State players in the past in the draft.
Right.
But all the other players we talked to, they were so excited and like emotional almost when we talked about if they got drafted by the Saints. He was the one player that didn't show any emotion. I'm like, we should have known. And then talking with him afterwards, I was like, all right, give it to me. Like, did you know a little bit? And he would not break. And just talking with some of the media guys, they're like, listen, that work with the Saints. They said, I won't name the guys, but they said if he knew, guarantee he had a conversation with the Saints that said, you better like keep it tight-lipped and no secrets are coming out.
Right. Yeah. That's so awesome. And one of my favorite parts of your coverage of, in Vegas of the NFL draft is I can't remember why this, maybe it was something you shared on Twitter.
Okay.
I don't know where I found it, but it was before the interview with Olave. Doug Mouton was sending it over to you, and he said something like, and this is like one of those weird things that I just pick up on and notice when I watch local reporters, national reporters, but he's like, really tough assignment for Brooke Kirchofer.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, I don't know about tough. Like, this is awesome. I'm in Vegas covering the draft. Like, this is a great assignment. But while you're doing that, you're on the street and like people were walking behind you and just making like ridiculous, like,
Oh, there's thousands of people out there.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Is that something like, do you get a kick out of like, have you ever seen that video where the little kid comes up behind the reporter and he just goes, and she just goes, "We're not live."
We're not. I do that all the time.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I've been in that situation plenty of times, and I'm like, camera's off.
You're right.
We're not.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how you handle that. You just like let them know, like, congratulations. That was really funny. However, it had no effect on our broadcast at all.
You'd be surprised though. I'm actually more comfortable with 1,000 people screaming and running around than I am if I'm in a room and there's one other person in there just staring at me.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have all the fanfare going on behind me.
Awesome. Well, I loved that interview with Olave, and he seems to be one of those standout players. I mean, I think it was Rod Walker who just tweeted like early MVP for Saints training camp. Olave's up there, Adebo's up there, Peyton Turner's up there. And look, I feel like sometimes we don't want to talk about him because obviously he had a very passionate, interview in minicamp and OTAs, but talk about an MVP of training camp, CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mean, a pick 6 on Jameis Winston yesterday. He just seems to, he's just a ball hawk.
Yeah, he is.
Anywhere the ball is, he's going to find it. And if it's in a position where he can either get in front of the receiver or make a play on the ball, he's going to do it. And I don't know, he just really impresses me. I think he's the best nickel corner in the league. And I love that he has just something to prove to national media, and that I like him. I like him.
It seems like he's just somebody who studies the game all the time too. We actually got to talk with him off camera at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament, and he was just talking about what his offseason looks like. And that guy, I mean, is working.
Workhorse.
24/7, watching film. He's watching other corners. I mean, watching his own game.
He's retweeting.
Yeah, well, that's a different part to his game that I think he has honed in on as far as like getting under people's skin. But I mean, he's still, when you look at his game, like most of us here in New Orleans, like respect his game, and I've seen just the talent he has in New Orleans, and to be in that kind of like joker position, that's hard to take over. And he's a younger player in the NFL, and he just has mastered that role in his craft.
We're going to play a clip from Jarvis Landry's interview when he was asked about CD Deuce.
CD Deuce, now he's your teammate. But let's say the receivers around the NFL, what do they think of CD Deuce? Like before you were a teammate of his now?
Yeah, he was one of the players before I got here. My mom was like, "Watch out for 22." He being here and being around Chauncey and seeing the passion that he has for the game, and how much he loves life, and the way that he plays the game. He's one of the most competitive people that I've been around, and that's something that is contagious. That's something that you can see other guys feed off of. And that's what you want on your team, and I'm happy I get a chance to play against him, compete against him in practice. I'm getting better already.
The cornerback group as a whole.
Bobby Aber asked him, "What do you think the other NFL wide receivers think of a guy like CD Deuce, since obviously he's just coming from the Browns?" And then he kind of like, that was the soundbite,
Right.
But after that, it was a really powerful answer because, he kind of spoke about how a guy with that much energy, I mean, he has that infectious energy that ignites not just the defense,
Right.
but their competitors on the offensive side. How good is that when Jarvis Landry, a veteran wide receiver, is saying, "This guy makes me better"?
Well, remember the Juice Boys that they called themselves last year. Of course, Quan Alexander was a big part of that. He is no longer with the Saints, just signed with the Jets. They lose that energy guy with the linebacker room, but Demario Davis still provides that, right? Like we've seen him popping off in camp and getting every hyped up after a big play. He's the first one to like pat you on the back if the defense does something good. But that's something the Saints defense has really done over the last few years, is when the offense is not playing well in games, the defense comes in and they've taken that role and that responsibility of like, we got you, don't even worry about it. Like, we're coming in, we're bringing the energy, we're bringing the juice, we're getting this game, this team back in the game. And that's just been so much fun to watch.
It's so awesome. finally, your take on Jameis Winston.
It's really early to tell, but just as far, if we're speaking just about his injury, like he's come a long way. Remember, he's still not 9 months out from that ACL injury, which is what it takes to fully heal that knee.
Right.
So to see him bouncing around and cutting and moving out of the pocket comfortably has been really great to see. Of course, we saw the 2 picks the other day, but remember how he bounced back so quickly in 11-on-11 drills. He was the Jameis Winston of old and was able to come in and kind of command the offense. I think we're going to see him progress through training camp. But remember, Jameis Winston's a risk taker. I mean, that we've seen that over the years. That's some people say that's a bad thing. Some people say it's a good thing. But I just hope they allow Jameis to be Jameis this year, because last season we never really got to see him open up and be himself, because he almost seemed like he had a tight leash on him at the beginning of the season and never really was trusted to just go deep and play freely. So I think now that he is able to play freely, he gets to have some consistency with Pete Carmichael as the offensive coordinator. We could see him do some pretty special things. And remember, that offensive line was so beat up last year. Wow. Dude had barely any time to throw, and that's not the offensive line's fault. I mean, you had 50-something different starters last year just because of injury. So now you have a stout offensive line that, fingers crossed, stays healthy. Yep. I think we're going to see a much more comfortable and confident Jameis Winston in the pocket.
The Baer Law tough question of the show is going to be on the Saints, particularly on, and look, you can say no comment if you want. It's totally fine.
All right, let's hear it.
It's a couple things, but it involves these pending players.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, pending suspension, Alvin Kamara. Pending some type of punishment, Marcus Maye.
Yep.
Pending rib injury, Taysom Hill. And then, unfortunately, there's a family matter that Tyrann Mathieu's taken care of. Who of those 4 guys are you worried about as far as impact? Who, if we lose any of those players, whether it's because they're suspended or because they have something to overcome on a personal level or a physical level, injury-wise, who of those 4 players, Honey Badger, Kamara, Marcus Maye, Taysom Hill, would be the biggest loss if we had to play games without them for a couple weeks?
So I'll go backwards.
Okay.
So I think Taysom Hill and Tyrann Mathieu will be back in a week.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to be a concern at all.
Good.
When you talk about Marcus Maye, this is one of the deepest secondaries going into camp that we have ever seen. Okay. If he goes out, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. You can plug in PJ Williams, and we've seen him working in that position. I don't think that's an issue.
And I hate framing things like this. I just want to clarify.
I mean, it's a part of it. I mean, we got to report on the good and the bad. It is what it is. And
I hate framing things like that. Oh, we can win without Marcus Maye. But
that's a good thing though, that they have depth at that position.
Correct,
and I think the player would agree with that. I think that if a player goes down with injury, he doesn't want the team to lose because he went down. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to be able to lean on his teammates and trust that, you know, whoever's it's next man up. I mean, the cliche saying, but that's how the Saints have been over the years, and I think they're going to continue that. So with that, I think Alvin Kamara is going to be the big question mark. How many games is he going to be suspended? Is it at the beginning of the season or the end? Remember that bye week is at the very, very end of the season.
Week 14, yeah.
That's brutal. You go to London and you don't have a bye week until week 14. They are going to be exhausted. So if you have Alvin Kamara out at the end of the season, that is a lot to ask for from Mark Ingram, who I know he's going to be mad if he hears this. We keep bringing up his age, but at any age, when you have the bye week that late in the season, like, your body is beat up and you need a break. I think he'll be able to handle it, but that's why it's so important they get these veteran running backs in. Of course, they just signed a guy last week. They've got some younger guys that they like. The guy from Baylor, Dennis Allen, seems to really like. Abram Smith, I believe is his name. And
that set the single season rushing record at Baylor.
They actually said they were planning on drafting him, but they were able to pick him up in free agency. So I think that's what's going to hurt the most, is when that suspension comes down for Alvin Kamara, is how do they respond with that? But thank goodness they went and got a slew of receivers this offseason, and they can kind of load manage with that.
I'm so excited about seeing Taysom Hill as part of that receiving tight end core. And, just
And he'll be in some, short down packages too. So we'll see.
Don't like framing it this way, but it's, a kind of reasonable mindset to have. Let's say he's out, because 4 to 6 has been the numbers that have been used. Let's say he's out 6 weeks.
Alvin.
Okay. Let's be reasonable. I want to go 3-3 or better. I want to go 500 without Alvin Kamara or better. So either 3-3 or 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being too optimistic by saying 5-1. Definitely don't think we go 6-0 without AK. I think we'll lose one of those games. And then we have Joe Burrow in the Dome.
That's going to be
in
exciting.
week 7, I believe, to close out the show and to move away from the Saints. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, the Bengals, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, the Bills, obviously Pat Mahomes.
Tough schedule.
And Travis Kelce, no Tyreek Hill on the Chiefs. But in general, regardless of the teams that we play, who's coming out of the AFC? Early prediction.
I will say
AFC Championship. Who's your AFC Championship?
Well, you mentioned them not being able to win with Alvin Kamara. Remember, a couple of years ago, Alvin was out with injury and a little bit last year too, and they were able to win without him. So I think
Dennis Allen can figure it out. With
they
that
can
defense.
figure that out.
Yeah.
Man, AFC.
Who's your early AFC
bad?
Championship?
Is it bad if I go with the Bengals?
No.
I mean, that's the easy pick, right?
I think Chiefs and Bengals is a
Look at the
very
guys
good.
they return, and I know Joe just had his appendix removed, which you never want that at the beginning of training camp. Gosh, that guy can't catch a break when it seems to injuries. But I think that team is stacked, and it's going to get better going into next season. And they finally drafted some offensive linemen to protect Joe Burrow.
I know.
It's amazing
That's
when the
big
front
time.
office puts it together and they're
know.
like, hey, we're going to protect this quarterback who we know is going to be a franchise quarterback. They're already talking about a contract extension for him. So
we'll close out with rapid fire. Brooke Kirchofer here on the show. Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports. It might be an early prediction, but I'm going to have to, I need you to make a decision for me. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So rapid fire. AFC Championship, Bengals versus who?
AFC Championship game. Man, they've got a lot of good teams. Bills.
Okay. So we're going Bengals, Bills.
Yep.
AFC. NFC Championship, early prediction. I won't judge you if you're wrong, nor should anybody.
Okay.
Not even preseason week 1.
All right.
Saints versus who?
Oh, you're putting the Saints in there? Okay, well, then I got to go with the home team. Let's put the Eagles in there. Why not?
Oh, you're from Philly?
From Philly.
Goodness.
Sorry, Saints fans.
Classic.
I think the Saints beat the Eagles in that case, and if they get that far, and that just tells you how good the Saints are if
Wait,
they
is
get to the
Lamar
NFC.
College in Philly?
No, I was born south of Philadelphia.
You're born in South Philly.
Yeah.
Okay, we never got to that, I don't
Yeah.
think. You never
I was only there for 4 years.
You never
but,
said that in
that's
your
home.
intro,
I
bro. Come
know.
on. All right.
Raised in Houston.
All right. So
Lamar University's in Beaumont, Texas. So.
that's right. Okay. I was like, that's not in Philly. Isn't there
But
like
did you see the Eagles draft?
Isn't there a small college in
Come on.
Philly?
A small college in Philly
Like
called Lamar?
a popular? No, not Lamar. I'm saying like, isn't there like a non? What are the colleges in Philadelphia?
Temple? Is that what you're thinking
Temple,
of?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Temple's a good journalism school.
Yeah. Okay. So Saints versus Eagles.
Yeah, why not?
That's a terrible prediction. Brooke, I've been nice this whole time, but I have to be honest here. Come on. Jalen Hurts.
Sticking with it.
As if we haven't had enough Alabama,
You said bold prediction, so
okay. All
here
right.
it is.
Saints, Eagles, Chiefs. No, Saints, Eagles, Bengals, Bills. Classic. I can't wait to go back and listen to this one come week 16 or
I
week
know.
17.
It's all right. I'm going to get dragged. It's fine.
Okay. Early prediction MVP and comeback player of the year.
Early prediction. MVP.
Don't say Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. That's boring. That's a boring answer.
Yeah. MVP. If Joe Burrow gets them to the AFC. I mean, that's
love that
that's
answer,
what that's what we're talking about. I mean, if we're saying he gets to the AFC and he deserves that.
Well, especially being protected. Imagine
Yeah.
how many more
Yeah.
completions he can rack up. And
No doubt.
I think completion percentage goes into that if it's going to be a quarterback. I would love to see a non-quarterback win an MVP award.
Yeah, but when's the last time that's happened? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Okay, comeback player of the year.
Sure.
Now, I want to remind you and everybody listening, Saints have 2 contenders for that.
Let's hear it.
Jameis Winston,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Thomas.
Oh, if Michael Thomas is as healthy as they say he is coming back this year, that's an easy pick.
How great would that be?
Yeah.
Offensive player of the year in 2019 and then 2-year hiatus from football,
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, nationally, and we know like the national headlines play into MVP and those type of, they do. So he's already on the radar for comeback player of the year. All he has to do is put it out there.
I really want to make some t-shirts that say no regrets. Watch me play now.
Spelling it incorrectly or correctly?
Spelling it correctly. I'm not meet the Millers. No, what is it?
We are the Millers?
No, we are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's We Are the Millers.
Yeah.
What does he spell it? No regrets?
Yeah.
No rugrats?
A mess.
Classic. All right. Quick rapid fire. 3 more questions.
Okay.
Favorite bar or restaurant in New Orleans?
Oh, you can't choose that.
Come on.
Bar and restaurant, so I get to choose 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Bolney Tavern, bar,
Okay.
Clancy's Restaurant.
Okay.
Or Drago's.
Favorite Mardi Gras parade?
Putting Metairie Dragos in there too.
Okay.
They're good too. Favorite, Muses.
Muses.
That was by far my favorite. And this was my first Mardi Gras last year.
Yeah.
So be kind, everybody. But Muses was my first favorite. Definitely my favorite from last year.
Okay. Final question. Favorite band and or movie?
Favorite movie?
You can answer both, but it might be like
Favorite movie? You're about to get a typical soccer player answer.
Go
Are you ready
ahead.
for this? She's the Man.
Oh my goodness.
She's the Man, but like my real answer, and like I'm not kidding with this, like Remember the Titans is all time
Awesome.
favorite
Awesome.
movie.
Yeah, that's up there for me. I'll always be A Few Good Men though as my favorite movie.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a tie between A Few Good Men and Shawshank Redemption. All right.
Classics.
Brooke Kirchofer, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time. I know you got to get to work. I went longer than I would have, but awesome conversation. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
thanks for having me.
I feel like we covered
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff. And any just final thoughts, just as a message, as a reporter to kind of New Orleans and sports fans around?
I think just for any aspiring journalist or anybody who's trying to like make it early on, and whether that's building a podcast or just young journalists trying to get their foot into the industry, just be true to yourself and just grind hard and you'll find your way.
You're doing an awesome job. Keep up the great work, and look forward to seeing you at all the upcoming events.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Awesome, Brooke. Thanks so much. All right, folks, this is Talk Culotta, where we talk a lot of sports. She's Brooke Kirchofer. I'm Jack Culotta, and we are signing out. Peace and love.